In 1996, the world was introduced to Resident Evil, and in that moment, the survival horror genre was born. Yes, I know Alone in the Dark and Sweet Home exist, shut up, don't ruin my flow. After its release, many other developers were inspired by Capcom's title, and decided they wanted some of that sweet, sexy survival horror pie. A torrent of survival horror games came out, with each title bringing something new to the table. Some of these titles became classics that could stand toe-to-toe with Resident Evil, and others surpassed it. There were also a fuckload of bad survival horror games as well. But there was one survival horror game announced which moved away from the monsters, zombies, and modern day setting many other games utilized, and instead set their game in the future, and replaced the monsters and zombies with deadly robots that inhabit a technologically advanced city. That title was Dead Unity. In this episode of Cancelled Horror Games, I'm going to explore Dead Unity, what it could have been, and why it was quietly cancelled and forgotten. This game was brought to my attention by one of my subscribers and mutuals on Twitter, Walter, so this episode is dedicated to them. On that note, if you have a cancelled horror game that you want me to cover, either drop it below in the comments or yell at me on Twitter, and if there is enough information about it, I may just do a video. Anyway, let's get started. Dead Unity was being developed by an entertainment software developer named Aramat Productions Incorporated. I tried to find any information about this developer I'd never heard of, and surprisingly, neither had Google. Besides a couple of little things here and there, the only substantial lead was a few developers on LinkedIn who said they'd previously worked at the company. The game was going to be published by THQ, who were pretty big back in the day, but much like Dead Unity, also fucking died. The earliest article I could find about Dead Unity was an IGN article published on the 1st of February 1997, but much like everything else, it included fuck all information, simply saying that THQ had signed an agreement with Aramat to develop and publish the game with an estimated release date for the first quarter of 1998 on original PlayStation and PC. Now with that very brief history out of the way, let's get into what Dead Unity was going to be. The story takes place in a city called Unity and centers around this guy. Who is he? I have no idea. I couldn't find any information about who the player would be controlling besides 3 juicy tidbits. They were a character who was an enhanced human that defended the human race from deadly cyborgs and robots. Don't ever say I don't do my due diligence when making these videos. There's not a whole much more floating around about the story, why the robots murder people, the main character, or the city of Unity itself and how it functions. So I'm gonna put on my conspiracy hat and join some dots that probably don't exist. In the trailer, there are several scenes where people are murdered by a wide variety of robots and mechanical devices, and even an elevator. One screenshot I found shows an artificial intelligence which looks eerily similar, and by similar I mean a carbon copy of Shodan from 1994's System Shock. Let's connect those dots. I think that the powerful artificial intelligence that controls a lot of the robots in Unity has gone rogue and has ordered them to kill humans. Perhaps because she hates humans, or thinks robots are superior and shouldn't bend to the whims of an inferior species. You know, standard sci-fi stuff. An old mate who I assume is the player character has been tasked with finding the artificial intelligence and shutting it down before she and the robots kill everybody in the city. And that's my made up story for Dead Unity, and if I am right, of course I was. An interview with an anonymous developer who worked on the game said they were adapting the story into a screenplay to try and get it made into a feature film, but didn't give a time frame on when that might happen. This was from an article published 12 years ago, and I don't know about you, but I haven't seen any movies where robots and zombies controlled by an artificial intelligence murders humans, so I doubt this screenplay got anywhere. It's a shame too. I can picture a cool movie or game coming from this premise, but alas, the movie business is a brutal industry. If a movie can't be made with this guy's script, I'm sure it would make for an interesting porno. In terms of gameplay, there also isn't much to go on in regards to how Dead Unity would have played. Unseen64, a website that posts about beta, cancelled and unseen video games that is a fantastic and major source for these cancelled horror game videos, said the game probably would have played like Resident Evil. Surprise, surprise. There also is a gameplay trailer that was apparently shown at E3 where that developer I mentioned earlier stated the game would have consisted of 3D models and pre-rendered backgrounds. If we have a closer gaze at the video video demo that makes the rounds, we can get a better idea of how the game may have played and looked, at least conceptually, as the game was in no shape to be actually shown to games media at the time. The character model in the trailer is low quality, but despite this, we do see some basic details. The main guy has pale white skin, potentially as the model wasn't textured at this point or he's a white supremacist, and is sporting an extremely fashionable bowl cut. If bowl cuts are popular in Dead Unity's future, I am glad this game got cancelled. The model is also wearing some sort of armor, but it isn't known if this armor would have played into resource management or if the player could have found new armor or upgraded existing ones. But the armor kind of fits into the sci-fi aesthetic. We also get a look at one of the weapons, an arm blaster thing that's similar to Mega Man, although I didn't reference that just then since I only talk about horror games on this channel and no other type of game exists. This is merely more speculation on my part, gotta extend that runtime, but I doubt the arm blaster would have been the only weapon in the game. Duh. And because of how it is attached to the player character's arm, it seems as though the weapons could have been upgraded, or have various ammo types. Sci-fi streamlines a lot of existing technology when exploring the future, so I don't think I'm just shooting the shit here. The bowl cut superstar can also be seen sneaking around. One section shows him in a sewer, and another shows him in a tunnel, hiding in an alley while a robot with wheels seems to be scanning for something. Maybe this isn't a place where people should be. Maybe stealth was going to play a big part in this game, or more probably, the guy was just sneaking around for the atmosphere. With all these conspiracies just flying around, I could upload this video to the History channel. Now there is one screenshot where we get a good look at one of the robots. A grey metallic thing with a red bar for an eye, big guns attached to its arms, which do this to our main bowl cut dude. We also see the back of a robot that seems to be floating in midair, and another that rips off a dude's head. Dead Unity looked like it was going to take some enemy inspiration from Resident Evil as well. Here you can see what seems to resemble a headless zombie, and there is another screenshot showing a dead guy in a helicopter who looks like half his face has been chewed off, or fucked up by a robot. But that first picture really looks like a zombie. I don't know how zombies would exist considering this game's setting and the fact robots are the bad guys. Maybe nanomachines? Oi, no, fuck off, get out of here, Kojima. I thought it was an interesting picture that suggests maybe something more sinister would go on in this game. We also get a decent look at some of the environments that could have been in the game. While none of the city itself, the video does show the far outskirts of the city, which look destroyed and apocalyptic, as though a catastrophe or some brutal conflict occurred and left the world outside in ruins, just like a servo's bathroom at any time of the day.
That's disgusting.
Unity itself is shrouded in darkness, though we can see the silhouettes of very tall buildings. There are wide shots of what looks like an industrial zone, with scaffolding, guardrails, hazard tape, barrels and boxes littered around. This environment is shown in several parts of the trailer, so I think this was the furthest along conceptually. There was also a control room featuring a screen that looks like it's displaying the city. There's also a few offices, and there's a large lighthouse which suggests the city was located near the ocean. Lastly, there are two pictures of outdoor areas, a factory and a destroyed greenhouse. The player would have been able to venture outside of the city and may have been able to see how the world may have functioned before it all went to shit. The world looked like it could have been a cool place to explore, and the variety of environments could have been really fun and refreshing, considering other survival horror titles on the market at the time which focused more on modern day settings. The future is pretty scary. I stress about it all the time. I am inching towards 30 and I can feel the Grim Reaper hanging out behind my shoulder. But playing a survival horror game full of rampant and deadly robots controlled by a crazy AI that may or may not have been ripped straight from another game sounds like a pretty cool game to me. But much like everything else in my life, it all fell apart with nothing left to show for it. But why? Usually when I talk about a game that's been cancelled, there was something playable, but a myriad of circumstances led to the game being shelved. Dead Unity is very different, and we wouldn't know just how fucked this game was if that one developer I keep mentioning didn't shed light on the project's state, or lack thereof. The developer revealed there was no playable demos of Dead Unity floating around on a dirty USB stick, locked away with old porn in a drawer with a sticky handle. In fact, they said all of the screenshots I used in this video, which were found in magazine advertisements and promos released by THQ themselves, were all mock-ups. None of what we saw was actually from a playable version of the game. The developers said this was because Aramat was a new company, consisting of what they described as really green programmers, and it took the team over a year just to get a simple animation exporter working, let alone artificial intelligence, physics, game logic, or everything else that makes a game, well, a game. Instead, there was a ton of art made for the game, and that's all they did for the entirety of the game's development. In the developer's own words,
"The engineering staff just spun their wheels through most of production."
at least the artists got to beef up their portfolios. At the company's first E3, they put together the video demo that I've used throughout this cute little video, but the developer revealed that alleged issues within the company ruined any chance of Dead Unity coming to the following year's E3.
The second year, we almost had something remotely playable, but the owner of the company derailed my efforts to get actual gameplay in place in favor of having animated texture overlays to make spinning fans on screen. This pretty much single-handedly destroyed our chances with salvaging our relationship with THQ. The demo was full of bugs, and you couldn't even play it.
The developer said they washed their hands of the project after this and started working on another game titled Arch Gothic, even creating a technology demo for it to show the rest of the company how it was done.
With that technology, they did manage to finish a working build for Dead Unity, with a character traversing through a few rooms with weapons and some rudimentary artificial intelligence.
The significant progress in Dead Unity's development was too little, too late. THQ did what THQ did before they were ironically killed off, and decided to pull funding for Dead Unity, and as a result, Aramat went under and took Dead Unity with it. The game's cancellation came in 1998, just a year after its announcement. The developer I've quoted said that only themselves and two others from the company have the so-called playable build of the game, but in order for it to actually run, you would need special hardware, so it hasn't been released to the public. This isn't too bad when you realize the build only consists of a hall and a couple of connecting rooms with some robots in them, so we aren't missing out on much. Unless you're really into hallways. I don't kink shame. Okay, maybe I do kink shame from time to time, but that's just because you guys are freaky. But that's okay. At least your kink isn't Dead Unity, because you would have blue balls until the day you die. Dead Unity, on face value, has some interesting aspects which could have set it apart from others in the genre, though the game wasn't fleshed out enough for me or THQ to claim that cancelling it wasn't a good idea. Dead Unity wasn't moving forward due to alleged mismanagement and an inexperienced team, so it makes sense it was taken out the back and shot in the face. I would love to see the bare bones prototype someday to get a better idea of what the developers wanted this game to be, but I doubt that will ever happen. Thankfully, many other games set their horror games in the future and had much better results doing so. So if you have an urge to play such a game, titles like Dead Space, System Shock, or Alien Isolation have you covered. That's not even including the myriad of indie titles available. Thank you so much to Logisii for lending his silky smooth and sexy voice to my video. You know what you should do? Go and subscribe to his channel. He reviews horror games a lot and he's fucking awesome. I don't really know how to end this, so I might just cut my voice off mid-sentence.